Coming up on A Day in the Life, we join the members of a paramedic team at Patriot Ambulance in Marlboro. They show us the ins and outs of the business and equipment, and we tag along on some calls. I'm Alexandra Rosenfeld, and this is A Day in the Life. We give you a behind-the-scenes look at people who don't exactly have ordinary desk jockey jobs. Not that there's anything wrong with those jobs, but these are a little cooler. You hear their sirens blare and hope they never have to come to your doorstep, but as we found out recently, you'll be glad they're out there and on call for you. Here's correspondent Dan Ginden.
Full response, Piccadilly Pub. Full response, Piccadilly Pub.
Patriot Ambulance has been in the business of saving lives. Co-owners Dave Walton and Maurice Ryan started out as firefighters, but saw an opportunity to make even more of a difference in people's lives.
So we decided to start with one ambulance, operating out of my partner's house, and then we went to two, and here we are 30 years later with 28 ambulances, and we eventually had to leave the fire department because the business became too big. You had to pay attention to the business. It was a difficult thing to do, but our origins are with fire department.
Those origins have made for a good relationship between Patriot Ambulance and the fire and police departments. What Walton also needs is a good paramedic and EMT crew to respond when they are called upon.
The relationship that we have, how we work with the fire department and the police department, how well everybody works as a team. And nobody likes to use that word team, but it really is. The firefighters a lot of times respond and are there ahead of the ambulance. So they start their EMT skills, whether it's a cardiac arrest, first aid. The police department have their role too. A lot of times they'll begin with first aid. And it's just that continuum of a higher level of care arriving to the scene. And then once our paramedics are on scene, they can provide their services at a higher level.
Paramedics Keith Ventimiglia, Jeremy Peters, and Jason McDonald were among those on call. Everyone was working a 24-hour shift, from 7 a.m. Saturday to 7 a.m. on Sunday. That makes for a long day regardless of what kind of job you have. If the calls aren't coming in, the paramedics have some rooms to hang out in to pass the time. The downtime doesn't seem to bother them because they all seem to be very happy with their careers.
It is nice to be able to go somewhere, help somebody out, be a positive influence. You know, whether it's holding somebody's hand or it's worst case scenario, a real traumatic injury or something.
If you have a good partner and you work, in just a decent area, Marlboro's nice. The fire department they're great to work with. So it's probably that. And you're kind of free to do as long as you stay within your service area and you follow the state protocols and all that stuff. You're free to assess a patient and kind of form a field impression and then treat them to the best of your ability and knowledge, within the scope of your practice.
I love my job. It's very rewarding. At the same time, there are also some drawbacks and sad situations that you see, but you really have to like what you do, and it's a great company to work for also.
Tanya Petkis is the supervisor. She's been a paramedic since 2002 and was an EMT before that. Although she started out in the nursing field, Tanya always knew that wherever she ended up, she wanted to be able to make a difference in people's lives.
Helping someone out in their time of need and trying to make them feel comforted and feel better and know that they're in good hands.
Medic 6 on arrival, UMass Worcester at 12.1.
Keith Ventimiglia works the P6 ambulance. Over the past year, he's had 5 cardiac arrest saves.
It's that continuum of care. It's the first responder, it's the firefighter, the police officer, all doing the right thing, trying to save somebody, and when we come in, give the drugs, defibrillators, it's a good thing, and it works real well here in Marlboro.
The Marlboro Fire Department dispatches the crew from Patriot Ambulance, and on this day, things were a little slow. Calls were not coming in because nobody was getting hurt, which is a good thing. While we waited, Keith gave us an inside look at the P6 truck. It is one of 2 trucks that are stationed in Marlboro. The other is P3. The trucks carry all their gear for a medical or traumatic call. They carry equipment that can be used in the truck as well as in someone's home if the situation should call for that.
Examples like that would be portable suction that we have that we can carry into a house, but we also have suction that's based in the truck. We have oxygen that's available in the truck. We have oxygen that we can take into the truck. So there's a lot of duplication of equipment here to serve essentially any type of medical or trauma call that we might get.
To look at and in the truck quickly, it may not look like they have much equipment. That's because most of it is closed up or in storage spaces under the seats. They carry plenty, so it all needs to go somewhere.
And this is able to be pulled out. It's what we would consider a 1.5-man stretcher, and that means about 10 or 15 years ago, in order for us to get a patient in and out of the back of the ambulance, it required 2 people to lift that cot and put it in there. And it was great business for the chiropractor, but not good for our backs. And so you saw about 10 years, a little less than 10 years, there was a movement towards a stretcher that you could actually pull out. And instead of us having to lift it, we're able to now bring the patient in and out of the back of the ambulance without both of us having to lift, constantly doing lifting with our backs. Certainly reduces the amount of injuries that we experience sort of on a day-to-day. This stretcher can be adjusted for the patient comfort and also based on the particular needs of the patient. So if they're more comfortable sitting up, someone who's in respiratory distress is more comfortable sitting up, we can make that position adjustment. If they're secured on a longboard where they're required to be flat, or due to the nature of their injury or illness they need to be laying flat, we can also make that adjustment. And you can see we secure them there. It's not to keep them from running away, but it's also to just make sure that they're secure during transport. And in the very unfortunate event that we might be in an accident, they're very safe, whether they're lying flat or sitting up. If they're properly secured, they're safe in the back of the ambulance on this stretcher. Second piece of equipment that we use fairly often is a stair chair, and this has also been one of the nice changes that we've seen over the years. Although it appears fairly bulky, for the patient who's on either a second, third floor or even in a basement, we're able to extricate that patient without having to make them walk. This stair chair can adjust so that their head can be secured. Again, one of the nicest features that we've seen with our equipment, sort of the evolution of equipment, has been the fact that these tracks now have been added, which years ago we would have to, my partner and I, lift and carry them down 2-3 floors or up from a basement floor. Now with these tracks, there's very minimal lifting that we need to do, and we rest that on the back of the stairs, and we're able to go up and down with them without having to lift them. If that stretcher is here, the patient's head is here. So if you look at the design of most ambulances, with the patient's head and airway here, most of the equipment that you see right here is geared towards managing that patient's airway. That includes suction that runs off of the truck, allows me to suction their airway, but also what we would call an ambu bag. And this is a device that allows me to breathe for a patient if they're unable to breathe. And with that, we have different sizes of ambu bags to best suit the needs of a patient. So here's something that is designed appropriately for a infant or neonate. This is more geared towards a pediatric patient. This is sort of a medium-sized airway, and it's designed to be inserted into the mouth of an unresponsive patient. And the way this is curved is designed to keep the tongue from falling to the back of the patient's mouth, which is typically what could obstruct someone who is unconscious, their airway. So we insert this in a patient who can't protect their own airway, and it's a way of keeping that tongue in the proper place, which also then allows us to properly manage their airway with those ambu bags. Well, we have oxygen here that we would attach to that, and that is for someone who needs additional oxygen, who is not breathing effectively on their own. We have the ability to add that extra oxygen to raise their oxygen levels. The suction we would use if they were either vomiting or they had blood in their airway, and we could keep that clear. If they are conscious and just need some supplemental oxygen, we have different delivery devices. One of those would be a non-rebreather mask that goes over the face. It's for a breathing patient, and it allows me to give them up to about 97–98% pure oxygen. And then finally, in this cabinet here, we have a variety of advanced airway devices and monitoring devices. Something like this is what we would call an ET tube or an endotracheal tube. And as paramedics, we've been taught the skills on how to insert this directly into the lungs by way of the vocal cords. And the advantage to something like this is if they are not breathing on their own, we can insert this into their lungs, put that bag valve mask at the very end of this, and if you're able to see it, there's a little balloon down here that we would inflate. The nice thing about this is it secures that airway. When we breathe into them, we're breathing air directly into their lungs, but at the same time, if that patient was to vomit or have blood or vomit in their airway, that balloon protects that from going directly into the lungs. So not only does it give high concentration oxygen to their lungs, but it also protects that airway from any foreign matter that may cause them some long-term damage. Just right here is a radio, and that radio connects me directly to a hospital. So during transport, as part of a notification system, the hospitals usually hate surprises, so we always give them a heads up on what's coming through the door. It also allows me some direct communication with the physician. So if in the process of that transport and care of that patient, I have questions or need to discuss how we're going to manage this patient, I have the ability to speak directly with that physician and consult and get some advice or some instructions on how to continue that patient management. Last thing that you might see here is this is an IV bag warmer, as we're sort of in the middle of winter. A patient who may be found out in the cold with some hypothermia, it allows me to administer warm IV fluids. A lot of the IV fluids that we carry in this truck are sitting here at room temperature. This heats up that fluid so that we more closely come to the body temperature of 98 degrees. And so that again allows us to better meet the needs of the patient.
There's also a shelving unit in the ambulance with a portable suction unit, an oxygen tank with all the masks and items they need, plus a heart monitor.
This is our drug box. It is secured because there are some critical medications here, but this gives you an idea as to the amount of medications that we're able to bring into the home directly to the patient. These medications range anything from a benign aspirin for someone who may be having a heart attack to epinephrine for someone who may be having an allergic reaction or a severe asthma attack, to something as mild as what we call Zofran, and that provides treatment for nausea or vomiting. So if someone has persistent nausea and vomiting that may begin to complicate their airway, we can treat that. We have medications to treat for, like I said, allergic reactions, heart failure, and then these are some additional medications for diabetics, low pulses, fast heart rates. The spectrum is fairly wide. Variety of types of overdoses we're able to treat. Someone who is overdosed on a narcotic medication, one of the effects of overdosing on narcotics is respiratory arrest or depression, which means it may cause them to stop breathing. We have a medication that we can administer, and in a very, very short amount of time, we've reversed the effects of those narcotics, and they'll be sitting up and breathing. However, minutes prior to that administration, that patient was not breathing and was in a very life-threatening situation. So again, we're able to really provide some definitive life-changing care to them in certain situations. And so underneath this particular bench seat, we have, for the most part, various splinting devices here. This is what we call a hair traction splint. We utilize this for patients who may have fractured their femur. And essentially what happens is, if they've fractured their femur, we secure this device to that broken leg, and it provides traction. So this right here gets hooked onto their ankle. This set gets secured to the top of their thigh, and we pull on that ankle and initiate some traction, mechanical traction. That immobilizes that femur, but also reduces some of their pain, because a lot of their pain comes from the fact that bone is moving. And so this traction device allows us to sort of reduce further injury and also reduce some of the pain and discomfort that patient may experience. We have a device for the adult. We also have one that's a little bit smaller for the pediatric patient as well.
And what ambulance would be complete without bandages of all shapes and sizes, and lots of them?
This is a bad day for a lot of people if we're taking out a bandage like this that actually will unfold to 10 inches by 2.5 feet. We call it a multi-trauma dressing. So we have the ability to manage different types of injuries. Over here we have burn sheets, so if someone has been severely burned, we can protect that burn from further infection. And then we also have some OB kits, labor and delivery, so that we are trained to deliver babies in the field and manage any potential complications from that. Some patients have a very difficult time having IV access because of just their anatomy. They have poor veins. Our veins are very difficult to find. So in worst case scenario, what we have is what we call an IO drill. And that is a device like this, and these are the needles. And this allows us to directly drill into their bone and access the bone marrow. And it goes typically in the lower leg here. And it allows us, if we can't get IV access, to drill to the bone marrow and administer medications and fluids that way. These are different size needles that we would use depending on whether it's an adult or pediatric. It's another one of those great advancements that we've seen over the years. Years ago, we didn't have anything mechanical like this. It was simply a metal screw that we twisted into their bone. And so it's nice to have this. It can be done very quickly.
It is a relatively painless procedure. In fact, there are videos that show it. We thought about showing you, but I can't tell how recently you've eaten, so you'll just have to trust us.
Another thing that we do carry is what we call a chest decompression, and that allows us to, if someone's got a collapsed lung, it allows us to put a hole into their chest to re-expand that lung. If someone's lung is collapsed and it's filled with air, typically from a spontaneous pneumo or some blunt trauma, it's not from an already existing opening, but there's air in the lung space and that's now collapsing that lung. What we're able to do is insert a needle that's about 2 inches long into their chest that will relieve and evacuate that air, which will then allow that lung to re-expand and provide significant relief. And it's done, you know, in terms of the relief, it's almost immediate, because just prior to that, that lung couldn't inflate. They're under severe respiratory distress. As soon as you relieve that pressure, evacuate the air, that lung almost simultaneously re-expands.
Patriot Ambulance has 3 bases. Although our crew is just hanging out in Marlboro for a day in the life, Patriot also covers Hudson and Lawrence. We'll be right back with more from the paramedics at Patriot Ambulance.
Officials were at the location for several hours. Luckily, there were no injuries, just a big mess to clean up. your city decides today. Citywide brush cleanup is underway here in Marlborough. How you can make a difference.
Relay for Life event aimed at raising money for the American Cancer Society, exceeding last year's fundraising totals by thousands of dollars.
For all your local news coverage, watch Marlborough This Week only on WMCT-TV.
Obesity in America is at an epidemic level. During the last 30 years, the rate of childhood obesity has tripled.
Childhood obesity involves much more than simply being overweight.
So what can we do to help our children?
Plan family exercise. Take the kids to the park.
We can limit the snack or junk foods kept in our homes.
Go for a family walk or bike ride, or simply throw the ball around the backyard.
Together, we can make a difference in the health and well-being of our children.
This is Ducky Duck. Ducky Duck is really no different than you and I. You see, Ducky enjoys using Marlborough's rivers, streams, lakes, and ponds for travel, leisure, and even for drinking water. But Ducky needs your help. When humans mistake stormwater drains for sewers, it causes many problems. While sewers are connected to the plumbing in our houses, stormwater catch basins are completely separate and flow directly into our public water supply. Polluted waterways can affect the quality of our drinking water, our wildlife, and the overall health of our city. So when you discard trash, fertilizers, or oils into these drains, it's bad news for Ducky and for you. Help keep our waterways clean.
I'm Alexandra Rosenfeld, and you're watching A Day in the Life. If you're just joining us, we're following around a paramedic team at Patriot Ambulance. We got a behind-the-scenes look at their P6 ambulance and got to know the crew. Now it's time to see them in action. Here again is Dan Ginden.
Medic 6 is arrived.
We've seen the ins and outs of the Patriot ambulances. Now it's time to see them in action. The calls begin to come in, and the paramedic teams react quickly. The ambulance arrives as quickly as it can to the scene. Not every driver on the road pays attention to the rules. You know, pull over for emergency vehicles when their lights are flashing and their sirens are sounding. It can also make for some scary moments heading into an intersection, as we found out.
Wow.
Luckily, the paramedics are very good drivers.
You get used to it, but you have to. It's always there. I mean, it's just part of the driving. You know, it's like thinking about steering at some point. It's just every intersection you come to, because you don't want to hit anybody, and you got people in the back you don't want to hurt. So. We stop for everybody until everyone else stops for us, and then we go.
Although the paramedics are trained to treat every call that comes in as a potentially life-threatening situation, sometimes that isn't the end result. The P3 ambulance was responding to a woman who fell in her apartment, while P6 responded to a call where a man was concerned about his neighbor not feeling well. The man who wasn't feeling well said he felt fine, so the visit for P6 was a short one.
So they gave us a call, check him out. He said he's okay, doesn't want to go to the hospital right now. And so he signed a refusal.
Go up there, on that floor right now, straight ahead. They're in the middle floor.
Meanwhile, P3 has arrived on the scene where a woman has fallen inside of her apartment. They quickly coordinate with the firefighters who have already arrived. Now we have no business showing up in someone's apartment, so our camera stayed outside, while the paramedics put the woman on a board and took her out of her home.
You're not gonna fall.
You're fine, Elizabeth. You gotcha.
You're not gonna fall.
Yes.
They get the victim into the ambulance and start the trek to Marlborough Hospital. The crew in the back works on getting an IV into the woman and ask her questions regarding necessary information for her check-in at the hospital. Again, driving comes into play here because they not only need to get to the hospital as soon as possible, but as safely as possible. This includes making a potentially bumpy ride as smooth as they can. As was the case with the woman's apartment, our cameras have no business being in the ER. Once the paramedic team has the woman checked in and settled, it's back to their base, where they wait for the next call. It didn't take long for 2 more calls to come in, and P6 and P3 were on the road again. P6 was responding to a motorcycle accident near the Solomon Pond Mall. P3 responded to a motor vehicle accident near Hosmer Street on Route 20.
We're going to Donald Lynch Boulevard in front of the Olive Garden for a motorcycle accident.
And that's the description of the vehicle.
It doesn't look particularly serious.
Luckily, the female motorcycle rider got away with a couple bruises and a small cut on her knee. Meanwhile, P3 arrived on the scene of the 2-car accident on Route 20 near Hosmer Street. One of the drivers was complaining of head and neck pain.
Okay, don't move your head. If your head hurts, all right? Stop moving your head.
The paramedics secure the victim to the board and move her to the stretcher, and then into the ambulance. It's off to the hospital again, on what has slowly become a very busy day for the unsung heroes of Patriot Ambulance.
You have to have the right attitude towards it. You can't be panicking while everybody else is panicking. It takes a special person to do the kind of work. You can go from sitting all day, or you could be running all day. And it's just eventually a good feeling that you're actually out there helping the public. It's a rewarding job, very much.
Thanks, Dan. It's good to see that the residents are in such good hands with Patriot Ambulance. That's going to do it for this episode of A Day in the Life. If you have any ideas for future episodes, feel free to contact us by email. And to find out more about WMCT, you can visit us on the web. I'm Alexandra Rosenfeld. We'll see you next time.